You as an optometrist, this is your core subject. So everything goes around this. Understood? So human optics of the human eye, right? And so try to read this. What do you understand? Karmati, what did you understand? What did you understand? I wish I had such eyes to be able to see nobody and at no distance. Arin, what did you understand? What did you understand? So again, when you go back home, also read these 3-4 times and see whether you can make any sense. Right? And we'll see. And what you think, what you thought of. Now morning I asked our Himidra Mahata, right? So then how do our eyes respond to the light? How does it respond to the light? How does our eyes respond to the light? कौन response करा light के? समाधि ना कौन response करा? तो आगे है light के respond करा कौन? Respond करना कौन? And why do our eyes have two different set of receptors, rod and cones? Different ion receptors here. And dark adaptation and previous. So that is photovision, right? So you will, on the process, you will learn this, and you know what are the things that will happen, and so this is what is basically. So why do you need to learn optics, visual optics? Why we should learn visual optics? Why do you need to learn visual optics? So because of we are going to what? Imperfect vision, we are going to make it perfect. No? That is what is our job, right? Our job is to what? Somebody who has imperfect vision, we are going to make it perfect. So to understand what is imperfection of vision, what are the things that can cause vision imperfect, then only you will know how to correct, how to perfect it. So whatever that is creating, disturbance on vision, that we are going to learn, right? And how we are going to solve that problem, that we are going to learn. That is what is why we need to learn visual optics. And that is what is our primary job. That is what is our most important job. Somebody who comes with imperfect vision, right? With anything, maybe myopia, maybe ARMD, maybe retinitis pigmentosa, maybe brain stroke, maybe corneal laceration, maybe dry eye, so anything that comes with vision symptom, right? And who says, I cannot see clearly, I don't see things in a correct way, so that you as an optometrist who is going to deal, who is going to make it perfect. Right? And that is what is our primary job. We are made for that. Understood? Right? Yeah, our main job is that. So correcting optical imperfection of the eye is an optometrist foundation and core professional purpose. Understood? So then after that, if you see all this, then what we have to know is all these sophisticated equipments, optical designs, design of lenses, design of frames, design of contact lenses, design of refractive surgery, all these things that we have to learn, right? And that is what we are going to learn in visual optics. right? Understood. So it can be refractive surgery, it can be multifocal lenses, right? It can be contact lenses, it can be intraocular lenses, it can be telescope, it can be visual field expander, low vision that we use, or can be CCTV, or the instrument that we use, or so all these things that we are going to learn in visual optics, right? So then what happens if you see our human eye is very amazing. So first of all, you have to understand what human eye looks. Understood? So if you take about optically, human eye has a field of view of, right, nearly 190 degrees, right? And it is so clear view of 106 degrees horizontally. And vertically 120 degrees, we have very clear view, even though we can faintly see, little further than that also, right? So if you take about, diffraction point of view, right? So your pupil can go from 8 millimeter to it can go up to 1.5 millimeter, right? So your pupil aperture can change according to light, right? So fast, doesn't take even a second to respond it from a different illumination. Your pupil is going to, control the diffraction. So your lens has three major layers. So because of three different major layers, what is happening? That has an advantage. So that is reducing our aberration. Your cornea is aspherical shape, so that reduces your spherical aberration, right? So all these points that we are going to learn, right? So what is there and an advantage of cornea? What are the disadvantages on that and how that is being corrected, right? And then what happens? It has an auto-focusing capacity, no? It accommodates itself, right? So we do need to give an order, right? And then if you take about exposure to, white exposure, if you take about, it has a very good adaptation capacity that works in a dark, that works in a bright light, that works in a isopic vision. So, it has a motion vision, not still vision. It's like a video, no? Right? It's like a video. Then after that, what happens? And also it has a 3D vision. In essence, exterior is there. So Charumati is like that. This is Nikam number. That's why it is not valuable. Benama hysterectomy hadanu nana. Benama dark adaptation hadanu nana. Benama hare the pupil lekara. Aperture size kara change karana. We have if we have to have a different device to use, then we could have valued that. So this is Nikam without any consciousness. Everything is happening. It is smooth, right? So if you take motor point of view, it has a specific movement, but it can slowly move like positive movement is there. And it has, the versions, right? Nine cardinal positions and convergence and divergence, right? So if you take neural point of view, right? So it has about 1.3 million plus nerves, and it has, right? So your visual pathway is one channel, and you have again what? Peripheral cell pathways there, magnocellular pathways there, so there are different pathways that moves, right? And your color vision is moving different way. Your pupil reflex pathway is different. Your form vision pathway is different, right? So these different pathway. That's not one pathway that goes to the different part of the brain, no. So then what happens? If you see, so visual field wise or a image compression wise also, right? So it is super. So what is the human eyes fraction? Camera's resolution capacity. Say roughly we can say 500 plus. So your camera, let's not the best camera has 12, 14, 16, 18, is still not reached to 20 even. What you say, spend millions of rupees on that handphone camera, right? Handphone that has not reached to 20 even. The human eye has resolution of more than 500. Right? So if you don't understand this, then correcting vision or correcting, right? So images on eye will not be possible, right? So you have to first understand what is the, right? What your eye is all about. So why this, in this bottle, right? Why this is visible and part of this is not visible? why the top part is visible and lower part is not visible. Why it is not visible? Why this top part is visible and then lower part also there, but this lower part is not visible. Why? Samadhi are going to be vision time visible. Why? Why the low portion of those this is not visible and only top portion is visible? Because the basic thing now what is behind? Huh? Refractive index. Right? So if it is same refractive index, you will not see. Right? There will not be any separation. To see separately, you have to have a different refractive index. So it becomes one continuous. So then what happens? Eye surface also what happens? In eye, what happens? You get reflected, light get refracted. In eye, light get absorbed and light get scattered also. Yes, in optics what happens. And this is why the image will be forming nice one or a disturbed one. All depends on how light is reflected, how light is refracted, how light is absorbed, and how light is scattered. No? So that you have already learned in optics. And that is what we are going to see that now how much you have learned and how we are going to apply. That's good. But this below jump in between reading learn optics. Now you have to do extra work on learning optics. Right? Understood. So this is what if you know what is reflection of light and you know if what sort of a reflection that takes place and what is the laws of reflection and which surface can cause what kind of reflection. So I suppose you guys are done. Reflection is equal to n2 minus n1 divided by n2 minus n1 square. No? That one? No. Yeah. Then if you say, see out that 9 lenses. How much it reflects? What is the reflection value of a CR that 9 lenses? What is the reflection value for cornea? How much light reflects by the cornea? So you know that in 2 also you know, in 1 also you know now. Cornea refractive also you know, the AR refractive index also if you know, then you can calculate or cornea reflection. Huh? Can or can't? Right? So if you already thought, now you should have one little beyond and see what is happening in cornea and what is happening in under river. So why reflection is important for us? Why reflection is important? We should know why reflection is important. If anything does not reflect, what will happen? You cannot see. Now you cannot see this layer because it doesn't reflect. The reflection is must. That if there is no reflection, no vision. Then there is a limit of reflection. The way of reflection. If reflection becomes, no, not in normal pattern, what will happen? That will create a glare. That will scatter. So what are the things that can be scattered and why that is scattering? That is what we are going to, right? We have to understand. So then what happens? Basically, you know the properties of light. You know the wavelength, you know the amplitude, you know the wavelength, amplitude, and what? Frequency. Right? So I suppose I don't need to waste time on that. You know the refraction, right? You know the Snell's law. You know the refractive index. So these things, without knowing this, we cannot go further. That's why I'm asking you. You have to again refer back. If necessary, you have to discuss. You know the focal length. So for vision, what happens? First interaction. take this. Light will interact with eye. Where? It first happens on the tear lip. Right? So your tear lip is the first interaction place. And then after that it touches the cornea. So it passes from the cornea because the cornea is having it's a huge convex lens. Then it passes through endochambers. Then it goes through the pupil. And from going back to that, you get into the posterior chamber, then go into the lens, go into the vitreous, and reach to the retina. So in this parameter, what is happening that we are going to do first. Understood? So we are after that, the light falls in the retina, and after that, the chemical interaction happens. How this chemical flows, those things we are going to do on a photochemical study. And after that, from there, how the visual pathway, how bipolar cells, amacrine cells, this cells, that cells, takes some image and how image forms. Right? And we will again turn back to the perception and sensation and finish the program. Right? Now, for a few weeks, you are going to learn about all this anatomy and its anatomical values, the optical values, and how that is going to, how eye is processing the light and forming the image onto the retina. Up to that point. Then after that, we will go to next phase, right? So that's what I'm telling you. Now, this first few days, we will be talking about all the optics of this thing. So first of all, what we have to understand is human eye is like a camera. So the camera part we are going to discuss. And what are the components there? Then after that, what is artificially generated eyes to understand the human eye, how it works. That is we call segmentica in reduced eyes. Then after that, the axes, the visual angles, right? So what is angle of kappa? What is angle of lambda? What is angle of thing? Now recently, Lahiri Mahatas, they are doing at Navaloka, this refractive surgery. And last ICAL program, we taught them about topography. Then only he understood why certain, right, certain these scans are not possible to do. Stem flows are not possible to do because of angle of kappa. Understood? So he was telling me, sir, we had a problem. We understood why it doesn't take correctly comes, right? So because of angle of kappa. So these angles are very important. The visual axis, right? So what is optical axis? What is pupillar axis? What is visual axis? What is, right? So this axis and this axis creates the axis in our different axes. How we are going to, and then finally we are going to learn about the optical aberration part. Right? This is what is our for next, hopefully 4 or 5 sessions. We are going to have this. If we can finish in 4 or 5 sessions, huh? So then at photochemical, we are going to have 4 or 5 sessions, and other one 4 or 5 sessions. Then our 15 sessions will cover. So because of that, very quick because we use this thing as I told you. I hope the slides will move about 1,500. Right? Understood? Right? So because of that, you have to be very quick. Now, as a camera, what you understand, if you take your eye as a camera, you accept resembles. Your main lens is cornea, and your adjusting lens is your crystalline lens. And then pupil is your aperture, and your choroid is your black part of the camera's, camera where the excess light will be absorbed. And then retina is your camera film where the images will be forming. And this is exactly a camera. And then you have to understand if you are taking in a daylight, right? And what do you need to adjust the aperture? Yes. If it is a small aperture, you will have a better picture. Yeah. You want to do optical? Optical and crystal vision. want to do optical and which one to we go finish. But optical right? Then what happens? You have to understand these factors, right? So then each component, if your camera, one of these components is not working, what will happen? Or not adjusted properly, that will create a what? Blur image, distorted image, right? And if you see the camera and see your eye, and what we are adjusting in camera, same adjustment has to be done in your eyes. And that adjustment is done by me. I optimize this. Right? That is what our job is all, right? So you have to understand. And then so because of that, you should know. So what are the things that can influence by the lead? What are the things that can be influenced by your tear film? What are the influence that can be created by your conjunctiva? What are the influence that can be created by your cornea? Right? And why your vision is limited to 6 by 2.5, right? And why how it can be made better, right? And how it can be made worse, right? And then what is the limitations, how the lenses are, and how the iris is working, choroid is working, retina is working. Up to that is your what? Right? Visual optics falls into the first part of visual optics, right? And where the image, how image is forming, right? So you know that your visible spectrum between 360 to 760, 380 to 760, which can stimulate your rod and cones, nothing else. Not below 380, not above 760, right? Only that narrow spectrum that human eye can sense, right? So other animals they can sense other the range also, but we can only sense our rod and cones are stimulation only by this, right? Only by this 380 to 760 nanometer. Anything that is above than 760 nanometer, if you take about this remote, this takes about infrared light, and if I flash infrared light, now you cannot see, right? But same thing, some other animal can see. Same thing if you use your handphone camera, the camera can detect. But naked human eye cannot see this, right? Understood? Because this falls into 890 nanometer, right? So we can see only 760 nanometer maximum, right? Then after that, what happens if you take basically, right? So what you have to see is electromagnetic spectrum. You already know that, right? And then the short wavelength, you know that. Long wavelength, you know that. Energies, you know that. You know how to calculate the energy, right? In different wavelengths, right? And you know that different electrons, particles, right? Suppose all these things are already done in what? Your optics. Now it is time to apply that. Right? What you have learned on the optics, you have to apply here. Right? And that is what we are going to see how much you have learned. And so most important thing is what happens. To be successful, what is necessary? We have to learn, relearn, learn, relearn, and again erase and again relearn. Today morning on Facebook, I have learned one thing. There was one story. One student was asking for a professor, right? But I have read so many books, sir. None of the book I remember. What is the point of reading book if I cannot remember? What is the point of reading book if I cannot remember? I have read so many books. Thereafter, the professor didn't say anything. That professor and this fellow went nearby the lake. And there was a pot which had a hole. Then after that, professor asked on that whole pot, where there was a big hole, on that pot to bring water. So because the professor did, he went without asking any question. So he tried many times, but he couldn't bring the water. Then after that, he said, Professor, I'm sorry, I couldn't bring the water. Right? But the student was also very decent fellow. He didn't say, you gave me the pot which had the whole, how can I bring water? He didn't ask. So he followed. So he had a good faith, good understanding about the profession. So he followed. Because the profession must not be a downhill. He must have some reason he must have asked me to do. Huh? Understood? So Ishwara was not Pandita like you guys. So he will read what professor asked many times, tried. Understood? And finally he said sorry. That he didn't say there was a hole I couldn't drink. He said sorry I couldn't bring water. Because he didn't blame for the pot also. Beauty of that story written was that. Then after that he asked. Then after that professor asked, but first time when you took that pot, now after several attempts, see the pot is now very clean. Now what is that pot is very clean because you have several times the whatever the dust, whatever the things were there, rust and those things or whatever things were there, dirty things were there, everything went out from that bowl. From that bowl, everything went out. Learning also like that. Learning after reading one book, you are not that same person before reading book. You change. You change. Your mentality change. Your thinking pattern change. Your concept change. You don't need to remember book, but that book will change you. You are not same person after and before reading book. This morning, actually from Facebook, that was one of the beautiful story that I have read. Understood? So after reading that history also, before reading that history and after reading that history, my concept change or not? Change. Understood? Right? So because of that, what happens? Anything, right? So that you have to understand. So now what happens? So the image that is falling, and then the process that is happening, that is what we are going to learn here. And then what happens? So focusing on image on the retina, 80% job is what? Cornea job, right? Lens just adjust, which is about 20% that is accountable, and accommodation is there, right? Which is for a auto-focusing purpose. And light rays that passes through the lens are more sharply focused on the retina, right? And finally, we are going to do some of the calculations like this, right? And if the image distance is 1 meter and your posterior focal point is 17 millimeter and your anterior focal point is 7.9 millimeter, right? And then the height of the image is about 15 meter. And what could be the size of the image that will made on the retina, right? And this is what we do with visual field. This is what we do with keratometer. This is what we do with slit lamp. This is what we do with optometry, right? All these things are based on this. Understood. So later part you will understand this. I'm just giving you some, right? And this we are going to look at eye into this way. Understood. So total axial length is 24.4 or 23 or 22.9. Different study will give different. Donor will give different. Emblos will give different. Goldstein will give different. MS will give different. We are going to compare with all those calculations, right? And then what happens? You can see here the front anterior focal point is 15.7 from the cornea. And then if you can see here your P1 and P2, N1 and N2, right? And then see the posterior focal point and see your antechamber depth and all these things. If your antechamber depth changes, your refraction will change. If your cornea becomes stiff, your refraction will change. Your lens becomes stiff, your lens will be changing. Your lens moves little bit backward, the whole total image will change. Your vitreous becomes, if vitreous, gets, liquefied, your image is going to change. So all these things, right, has to be calculated. And this is what we are going to have a lot of mathematics in these topics. Right? Next 3-4 weeks, we are going to do a lot of what? Calculations. What we are going to do? Sarvati is very good in mathematics, I heard. So she will help me to calculate quickly. Huh? Sarvati also becomes like a Meda symptom. But the university asks why What for optometry? Math syndrome for the optometrist. That's called what syndrome? Data syndrome. Understood? So don't ask anything on those sort of things. That's what I'm telling you. Good example today morning that this thing was that because that professional knows, that university knows what to teach and what to teach. You and me nothing. Right? And just have a faith and follow. Right? And these are the some calculations. Now if you say refractive power, in a relaxed position, I has about 58.363 diopter, and an accommodative position, I has about 70.57 diopter. This is approximately we should calculate around about 6 years old child, right? Then after that, focal length in air is about 17.1, and focal length in accommodative condition is about 14.2. Refractive power of the crystalline lens is about 90 diopter. In accommodative position, that will go to 33 diopter. Field of view is about 108, right? And fovea's field is about 5 degree, right? And pupil diameter can go from 2 millimeter to 8 millimeter, then can go for 1.1, 1.5 millimeter to 8 millimeter. So your, right, aperture, short down, ratio will be 6.8 to 2.4. Right, diameter of your eyeball is about 24 millimeter. So it depends. Again, we are going to do a little more detail. What happens? Your temporal side of the eyeball will be more flatter than the nasal side, right? Understood? So your lower portion of your eyeball is not round in shape. It's not exactly round in shape. It is little bit, different shape. It will be, and your nothing is round. It's not round. Actually, this is if you take about nose, your eyeball is, mechanically disturbed here, and it is more this thing, and your cornea is somewhere here, not at the center, right? And your, this low portion is more bulged than the upper portion. This is how real eye is all about, right? So it is not exactly like the cornea is not going to be at the center, right? So we will be learning. So this understanding is very important to understand the human eye, how images are formed, right? Then after that, what happens? Distance from the third vertex distance will be about 13.5 from the cornea. And the wavelength of the largest sensitivity, in a photopic condition is about highest sensitivity you will have in a yellow. That's why I can t-shirt flow as yellow, right? So the human eye is more sensitive to the yellow rays. And the nodal point 7.33 for the front vertex from the nodal point. And then back, so your principal plane will be about 1.6 millimeter. Entrance pupil will be about 3 millimeter. So all these things we are going to calculate it. That is what we are going to do with reduced eyes, segmented eyes, right? Right, and that is what we are going to, right, look at how this is going to function, right? So basically, what happens? Form and dimension of the eye, right? So if you take about, so you have two spheres. One is your cornea, one is your sclera. No, like this, no? Eyeball is like this, right? No? Almost similar like this. So, but if you take about two, this has the same principal axis, right? So we call coaxial spheres. So coaxial spheres calculation, I suppose it is done, right? It is not done also. Homework to what? Coaxial sphere, how to calculate it. Right? In essence, what happens? Different sides of the sphere following same principal line. Understood? Right? Following same principal line. That we call as a coaxial, right? Spheres. Right? So go through that. Write it down. You will not remember my Simona at home. Whatever I'm telling, write it down, jot it down, short thing, whatever that is important thing, you just jerk and go. Right? When you go home, then you can go and follow. Otherwise, right. Right? So this time visual optics, I'm trying to take it little bit more deeper than the past batches. So that means that is visual optics is going to be more advanced and more tougher than the last batch. Understood. So that is good or bad. So right? So definitely it will be good because you will get more information, right? Understood? So these things we are going to discuss. So if you look at the eye, this is how it looks, no? Right? And then front of the cornea you have you have eyelid, and then eyelid has a wiper effect, and then how it is going to impact on the topography, and we can see the videos also, right? And so how much we have to be careful when we are doing topography and those things on a steep leads and sort of thing in loose lead, how we have to do this thing. So today we are focusing more on what cornea, right? We are going to focus. Today's session can finish in cornea. We are very very lucky. So I know that Saruman will no. Saruman. Right. So basically, as I told you, first of all, what you have to understand is cornea. You all know that. If you look at here, cornea is not round in shape, it's elliptical in shape, no? Right? So cornea, you have studied in first year also. Cornea is not round, cornea is more or a little bit of a elliptical in shape. Elliptical means this shape, X shape. That means what happens? Your horizontal cornea is longer than the vertical cornea. Right? Due to that, what we develop 0.5 with the rule astigmatism is physiological astigmatism because of that. Right? So physiological with the rule astigmatism minus 0.5 is physiological because of that. That physiological is normally it should be there. Right? Physiological means what? Normally it should be there. My hair is white. Together. I'm 50 years old. It's physiological. Now some goes for hair is white at the age of 19 years old, it's not physiological. But at the age of 50, my hairs are getting white. Right? So I have a little bit more what? Experience and brain. Okay. So then here it says Eichel, we have taken this from Eichel. Eichel says, your vertical diameter is around 10.6 millimeter and horizontally it's about 11.7 millimeter. So that means horizontally it is longer. So remember this Eichel factor also, because of you guys are going to do contact lenses this time Eichel, and we are going to make you to sit an Eichel exam, SCT exam, right? So SCT exam for the moment now, Himidra and Lahigo and those people are following diploma on this Eichel this thing, and they are going to have a Eichel test. So why would prefer even you guys also have a Eichel exam and get a Eichel qualification? So it's an Australian qualification, which because of I have that connection, so we can do that. But remember this, right? And then so contact lenses, your module will be completely based. Last time also we based on Eichel module, and nobody sit for the exam. And this time, hopefully, some of you will sit for the exam. What I believe. Most of you have not seen for the NVQ exam, and we have made now first year a compulsory for NVQ exam. Now everybody has to go through the NVQ exam, right? So Eichel, I'm not going to make conversation because Eichel exam is not as easy, definitely not easy, right? Not easy. So, but if somebody wants to study, we will be following that model, right? So then what happens in these values, you have to remember that if you are going to sit for the Eichel exam also, so then they will say, vertical corneal diameter, right? So we call as a HBID. HBID means horizontal visible eyelid diameter. VVID means vertical visible eyelid diameter, right? So horizontal is horizontal visible eyelid diameter. Iris to iris, no? Cornea diameter is, right? Is it wrong? Correct or not? Right? So your cornea's diameter is what you can see in cornea is your iris to iris. So that's why you call as a horizontal visible iris diameter. So in contact lenses we say HBID. And what is the NBID? Okay, if it is NBID is 12, your RGB contact lens diameter should be 9 millimeter. So minus 3. right? If it is cross contact lenses, SBID is about 12, then you should have at least about 13.5, 13.5 plus diameter. So in contact lenses, that is very important, SBID. And vertical diameter. So vertical diameter is always little bit less than the what? Horizontal diameter. And generally females has nearly 0.1 millimeter less diameter than the males. Understood, right? So females they are having almost 0.1 millimeter less than this thing. So this was recorded in 1971, right? Before by birth also. Understood, right? So then what happens? Now you can see here antegeminal depth is about 2.6 millimeter. Your cornea's central corneal thickness is about 0.52 millimeter, and peripheral corneal thickness is about 0.6 millimeter. Right? So I think first year also we say 0.5 millimeter and 0.62 millimeter. No? Right? And here also now Eichel says 0.52 and 0.67 millimeter peripheral, and then center CCT is about 0.52 millimeter. Right? So your front part of the curve, now say cornea, if you take what here, right? So Arjun visible ID panel is 0.7, AVID is about 10.6, and maybe 0.1 millimeter less in females, and area wise, cornea has around 1.3 centimeter square area that covers, which is about 1/14th of the total eyeball area. Right? 1/14th of the total eyeball area. But right? So and then what happens? The back surface is about 6.2 to 6.8 millimeter, and front surface is around 7.7 to 7.7 to 7.9 millimeter. We can we assume most of the people will have, right? Central corneal thickness is around 0.52 millimeter, and then this thing, and then the anterior segment seg is this. So your cornea seg is this. Now if you take out, this is your cornea, and if you take out, if you like it here, and this is your back part of the cornea, and from here to here this depth is around 0.26 millimeter. Right? So I remember 0.26 is because my 26 is my favorite number. Right? Understood? 0.26 in many calculations, it's even cornea's age sensitivity normal value 0.26. Right? So this is we call as right? So if you see this one, now this is a seg or we call the vertex, right? So if what is this one from the top to this same line? What do you call? If your lens is this, and then front surface to the plane is known as what? Plate height. PLAT, plate, HEIGST height. So back surface to this plane surface is called sagittal. In other words, SEGGITL sagittal. Right? Understood? So then what happens? From the front surface to the plane is known as what? Plate height. Okay? Here after this. So then what happens in our human eye? What happens? Now, if the refractive index difference between two surfaces, if refractive index between two surfaces is, if there is a big difference, what will happen? Refraction will take place in a larger way. If the refractive index between two surfaces is very less, then what will happen? The refraction will take place in a very smaller way. Understood? Right? So where the difference between two surfaces, the refractive index difference is much larger, the refraction also will take in a larger scale. So even human eye, what happens? Between the cornea and the ear. So ear is about 1 and cornea is 1.376 is the largest, refractive index difference in human eye. So if you take out cornea to, aqueous, very little difference. Cornea aqueous to lens, very, very little difference. Lens to vitreous, very little difference. The largest refraction takes place because of that 80% refraction takes place at the cornea because of that, right? So because of that, that is the point where what happens, your refractive index difference is very, very high. Understood? Your refractive index difference is 0.376. But remember again, your keratometer and those things, tomography is not based on 1.376. It is based on 1.337. Understood? The human cornea, right? Refractive index is 1.376. But instruments are, right? Topography, keratometer, all these are designed on what base? Designed on 1. Not 1.376. Designed on 1.337. Understood? Design on 1. Considering cornea has a refractive index of 1.337, not as 1.376. Remember this factor. Huh? So don't try to calculate in instrument 1.376. Try to calculate it 1.337. Okay, up to now it's clear, right? So if your keratometer calculation, then you have to use what? 1.337. Topography calculation, what you have to use? 1.337. Your biometric calculation, what you have to use? You have to 1.337. But really, cornea is 1.376. Right? And if you ask me why that has been done, well, for calculation, that has become perfect. So then what is matter is when you make a formula, so what makes the ultimate result better, that is what they will take. Right? Understood. So this dimension of the cornea, which is most of the things you know, and then what happens? Cornea shape. Cornea shape is not symmetrical, right? Cornea shape is definitely not symmetrical. That's why we say cornea is aspherical in shape. No, right? If you take about cornea, what happens? Axially cornea, what happens? Cornea is like this. In peripheral part of the cornea is very, very flat. It's not aspherical even. See, some places it is parabolic inside, right? And some places it is hyperbolic inside. Some places it is spherical inside. It's so much irregular, right? Understood? So which we will come. What is hyperbolic? What is parabolic? What is right? So those things we know will come. And so basically, what happens? Fortunately, central part of the 4 millimeter of cornea is almost spherical inside, right? Almost, right? Whereas your peripheral cornea is very, very flat. Right? So then what happens? It's not symmetrical. Corneal curvature flattens toward the periphery, right? It's like this, I think. Here it's spherical. Rest of the thing is very, very flat, right? So corneal shape, it's in meniscus, right? So we all know that corneal shape is meniscus. Meniscus means what? Meniscus means what? So meniscus means you have lens like this. Meniscus means you have lens like this is meniscus lens, right? Understood? So this is convex meniscus lens. This is concave meniscus lens, right? So you can get again plano-convex, you can get biconvex, you can get plano-concave, and you can get biconcave. These are lens forms. Right? I suppose you have already learned about lens forms, right? So after that, cornea is a meniscus lens. And that is also what? Periphery is thick, center is thin. That looks like a minus lens. Understood? So then, right? So front curvature is about 7.8 millimeter. So dioptric value was 43.27. And back surface of the cornea is around 6.5 millimeter. And dioptric value wise, it is minus 6.15 diopter. And then actual refractive index is 1.376. And your ground substance like gas refractive index is 1.354. And your collagen's refractive index is 1.47. That's what we will discuss what is collagen, what is fiber, right? And then collagen 7, collagen 5, collagen 3, collagen 1, collagen 2. What is this collagen does? And what these chromosomes are doing, how cornea become transparent, and how in cornea this destructive interference will take place. So I suppose you have already learned interference, right? Positive interference, negative interference. Learn some of them, huh? So before your AR coated lens was made, AR coating was happened in cornea. Your today AR coated lens is based on cornea's, cornea's technology. Right? So your cornea is medial size greater than your normal AR coated lens. You can see your cornea is not reflecting. No? Your best of the best lens, like even Carl size, reflects somewhere. Right? Understood? So we cannot see cornea getting reflected. Understood? Right? So that is because of this arrangement. Now, if you take for how this, your this 43.27 came, how this minus 6.515 came, this thing, I think we have already done. No? Last time also we did, right? So vertical diameter is like slightly less than the horizontal, which is, we know that. So front curvature is about 7.7 and back surface is about 6.8. That is, so this the range is 6.2 to 6.8 in normal, right? And then range is about, what you have to understand is your range is around 38 diopter to 46.5 diopter is your right front part of the cornea, right? And 1 millimeter or 0.8 millimeter less in the backside. Okay. So if you found somebody who has K reading of more than 46.5, you should suspect that person may have a keratoconus. Understood? So generally, K reading should be below 46.5. And the cornea should not be flattened than 838 diopter. So that can be corneal plana. That it's too flat. Right? We call it what? Corneal plana. Right? And that will disturb the vision. Right? And steep can also disturb the vision. Now recently we got one child who has 47.5. Understood? And then we see his myopia. Right? Then after that we need a photography. And now it's clear questions. And again we did reading and saw there is no changes significant. Right? No changes significant. And we still advise parents saying that if the child is scratching, come and see us. Right? Reaching, then come and see us. And then because of 47.52 is not normal. But some people, even though they are tall, they may be healthy. Right? Even though they may be 8 feet tall, may be healthy, but most of the time, tall people die because of what? Heart attack. Because most of the heart attack, 80% plus heart attack happens for very tall people. Because their heart is not good enough, size is not good enough to pump for that length. Right? And if you see the records, the lengthy people, tall people, they get heart attack. Understood? Right? So then what happens? We have to see here, power of the cornea is about 43, which is about 75% of the total this thing. And optically, it is homogeneous. Homogeneous means like your eye is also homogeneous. Even it breaks inside also white means outside white means inside also white. So that is why we call it a homogeneous eye. No? Right? So when I was doing diving for my home, then only I come to know there is homogeneous style and there is non-homogeneous style. Homogeneous style means if it is top part breaks also inside, also same color. From there only I learned, right? So in cornea also it's homogeneous, it's optically very right. So not optically homogeneous, but optically it is, it's a homogeneous part. So which we will discuss. So why, this thing. So the question comes what? Removal of which part would make this eye myopic? So anterior part of the cornea, if we remove, patient will be myopic. Or posterior part of the cornea, we remove, patient will be myopic. Or anterior crystalline lens, we remove, patient will be myopic. Or posterior crystalline lens, remove, patient will be myopic. Now, number one. So myopia means more power, no? Correct now? So now you have to remove plus. If you have to remove there, you will be myopic. Or if you will remove minus, you will be myopic. Myopic. If you remove plus, then patient go into the hyperopia. Then the minus, no, I is minus. In myopia to be, I should be plus. I should be plus. Then I'm using minus 4.5 because my eye is more plus 4.5. So that means what happens? You should remove the minus part. No, correct or not? So we have to remove what? Minus part. If you more you remove the minus part, more you become myopic. More you remove the plus part, you become hyperopic. That's what we do with the LASIK surgery. LASIK surgery what do? To reduce the power of the cornea by flattening the cornea. Understood? By doing what? Flattening the cornea. That's simple as such. Right? Right? So more the cornea gets flat, what will happen? Power will increase or reduce? Reduce. More cornea gets steep, power will be more or less. Because keratogons they have 62, 72 power, and normal people they have 43 diopter. Their cornea, keratogons, the cornea is coming forward. That so then what happens? That we can calculate also. So that calculation is what? N2 minus N1 divided by R. So this R, small is better, larger will be, if it is this R value is less, right? The cornea get more power, or if this R value is less, the cornea will get more power. Less, no. Understood? So because of what happens? Now if you get, this is divided by 8, the value will go down. If it is divided by 6, the value will go up. Whatever the value comes, whatever the top comes, maybe 100, you divide it by 8 is better. You will get more value, or top comes 100, divided by 2 will be getting a more value. 2 will be, so radius of curvature, when it is less. So, right? So you get more value. So less means what? Radius less means what? Cornea should be steep, no? Understood? So this is a radius from here to here. And this is the radius from here to here, which is more powerful. Surface power is more on this, or more powerful this. Automatically, this is more powerful. Curve more. Curve more. That is more powerful. Understood? That's why your plus lenses see powerful lenses very curve. Minus lenses see powerful lenses more curve. And less powerful lenses, they are more flat. No? Understood? So that means what happens? This radius may be 8 millimeter. This radius may be 6 millimeter. Right? So if you go to the keratometer, in autospectrometer also, or manual keratometer also, you can see 7.5, 45 diopter. 7.2, 47 diopter. 7, 48 diopter. 6.8, now that is, 52 diopter. So the radius goes down, power goes down. Radius, the number of radius, will be more, say 8, then the 38 diopter. Right? So you can. So that means automatically anterior surface of the cornea is plus or minus? Plus or minus? Plus. Because of what happens? Now if you see anterior surface of the cornea is, according to this formula, surface power formula, I suppose. So you know that N2 minus N1 divided by R. N2 means cornea 1.376 minus cornea AR is 1. So from this is AR, this is cornea. So this first contact is here, and the anterior surface of cornea. So then R is 7.8. We can assume can be 7.6, can be 7.4, can be 7.2, can be anything can be possible. So right. So then 0.376, and this is in millimeter scale. So we are going to make in meter scale because the indexes are in meters scale. So automatically I have 0.0078. So then it will be around nearly, right, 50 plus. Right. So this is positive. So back surface of the cornea, if you put in the same formula, what will you get? So back surface of the cornea will happen. Now if from here to here, the light goes. The first contact is your anterior part of the cornea, and then this is posterior part of the cornea, and the light will exist under the aqueous. So N2 means aqueous, N1 means your posterior part of the cornea. So N2 means 1.335. and your cornea is 1.376. So now from here to here, if you reduce, what will happen? That power will be minus power. Correct? Correct or not? So posterior part of the cornea has minus power, and anterior part of the cornea has what? Plus power. So if we want to make myopic, what we have to do? We have to remove. It's plus or minus? We have to remove minus. So that means posterior part of the cornea, we have to, if we remove, then patient becomes more myopic. Understood? The patient becomes more myopic. So now you see here, posterior part of the cornea is, so here it's same thing, if you take here posterior part of the cornea, your cornea appears. The formula is this, and this is your, refractive index. This is your corneal refractive index, and the back surface of the cornea is about approximately 6.8. If it is front part is 7.8, then what happens? This to be turned into meter system, then you get minus 5.88, right? So that means that minus 5.88, if you remove, patient becomes more plus 5.88. So plus 5.88 means patient becomes more myopic. Right? 5.88 diopter. Somebody don't understood that. Somebody don't will understand. He is very good in mathematics. Right? So remember this factor. Then after that, so if you want to make patient hyperopic, now what you have to do? Anterior part of the cornea you remove, or posterior part of the cornea, the lens remove. So anterior part of the cornea you remove, then patient becomes hyperopic. Right now, if I want to make my glasses to be removed, what I have to do? I have to reduce this glass, and I become little hyperopic. Then my minus and plus balances, and I become eutropic. Right? So then what happens? So this is what? Again, so this is cornea's front cornea's N1 means, so the N2 means cornea, N1 means for your what? Yeah, and which is front part is about 7.7 millimeter, which you have put into meter system and divided by 1000. Then your power comes as a 48.83. Then 48.83 and 5.55, if you reduce, then what happens? Total power of the cornea comes around 42 point something. In this patient. Understood? So same thing, if you apply here, instead of 7.7, if you apply here 7.2, this power will go to 56. Same place, if you put this 8.7 instead of 7.7, then power will reduce to 30. Understood? Right? So then individual cornea, if it flatten the cornea, more hyperopia, and then stimulate the cornea, the patient becomes more myopic. Understood? That condition, in which condition? If patient has a refractive myopia or refractive hyperopia. No? So axial length, without considering axial length. So if it is refractive myopia, now we consider, if I check Mahesh's eyes, and I found Mahesh has 46 KD, right? And I expect generally people will have around 44 diopter. So that means above my expectation, Mahesh has 2 diopter, plus 2 diopter more K reading, keratometer power than expected. So what I will expect from Mahesh is, if Mahesh's eye is 23 millimeter, normal size of eye, right? She should be minus 2 diopter. And that means she is refractive myopia. But if Mahesh's eye is 38 diopter, the cornea is 38 diopter, and Mahesh is minus 2 diopter patient. Now 44, it should be dropped to 38. How much it has dropped? That is 5 diopter drop. Now 6 diopter drop. And on top of that, 2 diopter she is myopic also. This 8 diopter difference is there. So what I will expect is, right? So her axial length should have at least 2.5 millimeter lengthier. Then, so that means her axial length I will expect around 25.5 millimeter. So whenever I do my biometry for a cataract, I calculate that one. So when I do, okay, axial length came 24.9. 24.99. KD how much? Okay, 45. one diopter come from there, right? And then the spectacle correction is this. Okay, matching or not? If not matching, I will be again doing my biometry. Understood? Clear that what I'm telling, right? So what you have to understand is cornea should be around 43, 44. Excellence should be around 23. Cornea is 43, excellence is 23. Perfect. Matching. No problem. Cornea is 38, excellence is 23, but patient is immetropic. Not possible. Impossible. That means your biometry is wrong. Finally, patient is going to have, after surgery also, patient is not going to have 6/60 vision also. The patient has to wear glasses. So you are going to spoil surgeon's whole surgery. Understood? Right? So that calculation you can learn from this. Are you clear? Clear than other? Now see, this is your front part. And this is your back part of the calculation, what we did. And this is your cornea, right? Now we are going to learn some extent about cornea, right? And then you know that cornea is dome in shape, aspherical in shape, and cornea is transparent. Cornea is optically homogeneous, right? And then cornea has refractive index power, around 75% refractive power is covered by the cornea. Cornea has refractive index of 1.376. Cornea, 1 millimeter change in cornea will change 6 diopter, right? And then it's a convex mirror of 2.250 diopter of convex mirror, right? And Perkin's has an image, first and second falls on the cornea, right? And then what happens? It is parabolic in nature, because of that, it has a what? Physiological astigmatism, which we are going to describe further. We are going to what? Describe. So composition of cornea, right? So we expect cornea to be 78 to 82% water content. Not maximum 78%. 78 to how much? 82%. Right? 78% to 82% cornea should have what? Water. And 15% it should be collagen. And 5% it should be proteins. 1% it should be gas. And 1% there should be salt. And this is a wet cornea. And it is approximately, epithelium should account for 10% of the weight. Right? So this is your composition of cornea. And then, right, so this is how your cornea is getting, maintaining its transparency. And this 78 to 82% cornea should maintain the water. And that is what we are going to learn in metabolism part, right? Understood? So this is what cornea looks like. You already know that, right? Cornea has 5 layers. So this study is called what? Histology. Histology. Cornea has how many layers? 5 layers, right? So you already know. First year you have done epithelium, bone membrane, diploma, descendant membrane, endothelium, right? So it's right. So these 5 parts you have already understood, no? Right. So if you take about epithelium point of view, right? Epithelium is very small, but there are some responsible microvilli and right? So those things for to hold the tear, right? To hold the mucous membrane of the tear, right? Because otherwise, cornea is hydrophobic in nature, right? And it's uniform thickness and it's a stratified layer. And epithelial itself has different, again, what happens? Layers, no? Right? So there are 3 major layers. One is columnar layers, one is wing cells, and one is stratified layers, right? So first, what happens? First, it is very lengthy. And after that, what happens? It gets flattened. And it gets flattened. And it gets more flattened. And it gets flattened. In 7 days of time, what happens? The flatten. Understood? Okay. So first, we use long basal layers, columnar layers. Then after it gets flattened, shortens. Like almond also will be like that. Basically, gold height will go down, and one day, right? So just I'm giving an example, not to this thing, and you will remember. Understood? You will what? Remember, right? So this is what is the 3 layer of three. This is how your epithelial layer. This is not other layers. Only epithelial layer also. You have to see. There are 3 main cells. The top one, which is flattened one, is called stratified layer. Between one is wing layer. Wing layer has different wing and it connects. So that we are going to discuss now what is the importance of that. And the columnar layers will be there, right? And then what happens? You have to, again, what happens? Your squamous layers, you will have about two or, set of layers you will get in a squamous layer, right? Right? And then what happens? You get two set of squamous layers, wing cells of again two or three set of wing layers, and then columnar layers of one set, right? One set. Okay. So that is how the arrangement will take place. And epithelium itself, what happens? It is there is a mitosis process. Once you remove, now if I remove this whole epithelium layer also, within 7 days, what will happen? Without any medication, without any eye drop, without anything, the whole epithelial will regenerate. So because of epithelial has what? It has a mitosis process, right? And then epithelial is a vascular in nature, and because right, and then so because of that, what happens? But your nerve fibers endings are coming up to what? Up to what? Epithelial layers, right? So generally, other for these things you won't see, and nerve fibers layers. The nerve fibers, you get lot many nerve fibers, and which is when it is swollen, you will see more. So electronically, when you look at, right? So epithelium looks like this, which has a small boosters like in the top. If you see, right, and that is what is microvilli, and then what I'm right. So which holds the tear, right? And if you take about that is very important. And wherever there is some sort of a irregularities on your epithelium, your ear will optically, but it makes smooth, very nice, right? Understood? Some people who have dry eye, their vision drops to 6/12, 6/18, and you just put a refresh layer on top of them or a contact lens solution, then immediately vision improves, right? Understand? Some people when they have dry eye and they say, I'm not in pain, they are looking at the then you see it's a dry eye. Then and there you put the drop, vision improves, right? And don't try to compare on the right. That's not a solution, right? Because, so then what happens? At the surface, epithelial cells are around 45 microns to into 5 micron with a 25 microns of nucleus. So this value, remember especially for what? When you are sitting for a eyeball exam. In future also we will be talking same thing, and remember these factors, right? So these values are critically asked, right? So as I told you before also, now see your squamous cells looks like that, your wing cells looks like that, and your columnar cells, in a horizontal transverse way, it looks like that, right? And then squamous cells you get about 2 layers, wing cells around 2 to 3 layers, and columnar cells are 1 layer, right? So these values, remember, right? 2, 3, 1, right? And turnover is what happens every 7 days. Every 7 days, you are having a new cornea epithelium. So if you take what whole body, right? Actually, in your life, you have changed yourself thousands of times, lakhs of times, no? Actually, you are not the same person. Your same epithelium will not be there, same blood will be not existing. Whether you use or not, blood cells will die and new blood cells will come. Your epithelium will die, new cells will come. Your connective tissue will die. Yeah. So you are always after a few months of time, you are completely a new, fresh person actually. After a few months of time, you are what? Completely a new, fresh person. There is nothing old part. Not like vehicle. Vehicle also, you can do like that. So every month you change, steering you change, gear you change, then box you change, engine you change, finally new vehicle will form. No, same like that. Understood? So your whole body, there is nothing, going to be permanent. No? So every time new things are forming, old things are dying. So that means how many death our Samar Singh Petau has died by this time also, by the age of 1920 also, Samar Singh Petau must have died more than 20 times. Understood? So that means your whole body has been cleansing, forming new, and you are a new person. So your cornea, if you take what, it's about maximum is 7 days. Your eyelid maximum is 120 to 150 days. Whether you use or not, in your washing face, eyelids are falling. So maximum days 120 to 150 days, not more than that. Right? Everything changes in 3-4 months of time. Everything. Our child, how many times it has changed when she came to eye care. Now she has come now 1.5 years. 2 years. So 2 years of time, she must have changed about 4 times at least. Huh? Now she is not that Dakunu, what? Charmati. Now she is Colombo Charmati. Whatever the Dakunu Charmati, will always die. Understood? Huh? Right. So, like, so remember this and this, so this structure of this your epithelial cells is very, very important. Other cells, what you get a melanocytes. So these melanocytes are very important. So what? If you see some of the people, if you see the corner of the canvas and those areas, or your limbal, pharynx areas, you will get brown dots and those things. That is coming from what? Melanocytes, right? And then you can get macrophage and lymphocytes, right? And so lymphatic drainage system, right? So if you take what beauty of human eyes, lymphatic system is what happens. Whatever the lateral part, it falls on your, right, falls on your alveolar part. Whatever the nasal part, it falls on your mandibular part, right? Mandibular part. Understood? So whatever from the nasal side comes, that falls into the mandibular part, and whatever it comes from the lateral side, it will fall into your alveolar part, right? So then what happens? Microvilli and micropillae, so which is mainly for to retain the tear, right? Then after that, basement membrane, we have a very thin basement membrane between the epithelium and the post-bovine membrane, right? So bovine membrane and epithelium between, you get a very basic. Now this is not taught in first year, and when you move further, you will get more further ideas. Understood? Right? So then what happens? This is your basement membrane, which is we call as basal lamellae, and which is about 10 to 65, microns thick, and between the interface between the Bowman's membrane and epithelium, which is the basement membrane of epithelium, right? Then after that, what happens? Epithelium. How does this epithelium cells they get adhere to each other, right? So what I have done was, now say the things I have elaborated for your purpose, right? So you won't get this cycle slides this thing. So I have, right? So what is hemidemosomes? They just mentioned hemidemosomes, right? So I have mentioned here the hemidemosomes are, it's a connective tissue cells, which is connecting between two cells. Now in cell and third cell, which mean they are the connection doing those connecting cells are called hemidemosomes, right? Hemidemosomes, that they connect, and then you see the epithelial cells to underline the basement membrane. There is a critical role in tissue adhesion and the signal in the transduction, right? So that we call as hemidemosome. And then when you are learning about corneal ulcers, corneal epithelial erosions, and those sort of things, how hemidemosome, helps us to regrow. Okay, so that remember this hemidemosome basic. And then what happens? There are collagen 1, collagen 2, collagen 3, collagen 4, collagen 5, collagen 6, collagen 7. Okay, so that is your homework. What collagen 1 does, type 1 does, what collagen 5 2 does, collagen 3 type 3 does, collagen type 4 does, collagen 5. So your anatomy teacher, they are more better than myself, right? Who can explain you this 7 types of collagen and their role in eye, right? And what it does, right? In cornea, this phase you get collagen 7, right? Collagen 7, right? And it's enough, so that, right? So that you have to, it is also for an anchoring purpose. And collagen 7s are proteins, right? And this is, I have, elaborated in a sense, right? So when for the what is collagen 7, if you have to see, it's a collagen, it's a protein synthesis, which is anchoring the basement membrane, right? Tissues are anchored by the collagen 7, and collagen 7's work is that. So this collagen is very important in cornea because what happens? We do this collagen therapy, which we call as a cross-link therapy, right? For keratoconus patients, right? And then understanding collagen is very, very important because of that, right? So if there is something happen in the cross-link therapy, the patient will get blurred vision for at least for 3 to 4 months. Understood? And then there will be some discolorations and sort of things. So which we are going to learn. And so because of that, collagen studies important. Collagen therapy to understand collagen studies important. So collagen 1 to collagen 7, what? 509. What you have to do? Have to go through and then find what is this collagen 1 does, what is collagen 2 does, what does collagen 3 does, 4 does, 5 does, 6 does, 7 does. Right? So go through get this thing. So we are going to now second layer called Bowman's layer. Now we all know that from second layer, right? Bowman's layer is what? It's an acellular layer. Means there is no cell kind of a thing. There is nucleus, mitochondria, reticulum, those, right? So those things are not there. It's an acellular layer, right? Because of that, it doesn't regenerate itself, right? And once it is damaged, it's very tough. Once it damages, it damages, right? And if you see somebody's cornea has been damaged, and there is, like recently we saw our Mr. What? Huh? Samaranka. So he has white patches. So that means already his, Bowman's membrane also has been damaged, right? So that we what we have to understand, right? So collagen fibers, what happens? It's thicker, in a periphery, but when it reaches to limbus, it's very, very thick. Understood? So thicker in the periphery than the center, but when it comes to limbal area, the Bowman's membranes are what? It's thin, right? So that we have to understand. And then so then what happens, especially when it comes to this stroma, this Bowman's membrane, again what happens? Your front part of the stroma, we divide into two parts. Your stroma is the one which is thickest one, right? 90% thickness is there. And this part of your stroma looks like Bowman's. And this part of this, so this is very tough. Your stroma itself also what happens? Anterior part of stroma is tough than the inner part of the stroma. Understood? So your anterior part of the stroma is more tougher than what? Your inner part of the stroma, right? So that is when you are doing this refractive surgery and those things, you have to be there. So it's some so the fibers thickness is around 24 to 27 microns, and which is much thinner than what happens, much thinner than your stromal fibers, right? And these fibers, if you take what our wavelength is what, our visible wavelength is what, 308 to 760. So what happens? These fibers are thinner than our wavelength. This lamellus, right? This lamellus, in a sense, the gap is smaller than our wavelength. So because of what happens, destructive interference takes place because of that. Right? So because of that, only the cornea becomes transparent. Right? So cornea does not have any sort of a shadow because of that. Right? So which we have to understand. Right? So when it comes to slit lamp, I suppose you guys have already seen this. This technique is known as what? Slit lamp. This technique, corneas, thicknessing, corneas, layering technique is what? Samadhi, what is the technique that we use for a slit lamp to see the layer of the cornea or the layer of the lens? So, layer of the lens. So, corneal layer saw. So, what is the technique we use? What is the technique we use for a slit lamp to see this? We call as a what? Optic section. What we call? Optic section technique. Again, remember there are 8-10 techniques on slit lamp. What are the techniques? Optic section is to see the layer. Then there are direct illumination technique, there is indirect illumination technique, there is retro illumination technique, no? And there is parallel pivot technique, then scattering technique, right? Then we have what? We have specular reflection technique. Then we have sclerotic scattering technique, right? And we have tangential technique. Slit lamp practical done or not? Done or not? It's like practical, done or not for you, guys? Done or not? Done? Not done. No, not done, then have to do. What is not done? There's no not done. I don't remember which batch I have done once. I consider, these brothers must have done. Understood? Right. So this technique is what we call as a optic section technique. From optic section technique, what we can see the layer of the cornea, right? And when it comes to, we have now 45 into magnification, what you call straight line. So we can see even in the layers. So in the layers to see, you should have high magnification, 35 into 45 into, right? So which you get in a 5-step, straight line, right? So you don't get in a 3-step, 2-step not possible at all, right? 1 step forward. So 2-step you get 1.1, 1, 10 and 16. 3-step you get 10, 16 and 25. And 4-step you get 4-step is not there. 4 and 3 is in one. That is about 35 and 45 into my brain. So fortunately we have, and if you have a specular reflection technique, you can see yes, right? So we can practically see how individual looks like. So then what happens? It's a kind of a it's stroma, which is 90% of your thickness is covered by the stroma, right? And it is 0.5 millimeter thick, which is cornea's total thickness is 0.52 or 0.67. So 90% thickness is covered by stroma layer. Stroma's other name is substantia propria, right? And this is made from what? Fibroblast, which is being called as any keratocytes means kerato means cornea, site means cornea cells, right? Kerato means cornea, site means what? Cells, and it's a normal name is fibroblast, right? So then what happens? You get it contains about 2 to 3% of keratocyte, which is fibroblast, and you get a 1% of gas, aminoglycosides, right? Glycoaminoglycans, right? And glycoaminoglycans you can get, which is cement actually. It's a fibers are deep into and coated by the gas, right? Coated by the gas, right? And then what happens? Here again I have elaborated what is the keratocyte means, and what I have elaborated what gas means. Right? So that is for the elaboration purpose, right? To understand what it doesn't mean. And the keratocytes are primarily responsible for forming a skin barrier and they're producing keratin, and which fibroblasts produce the collagen and other intracellular matrix components. So this is what is the explanation for what keratocyte means and what is gas means, right? Understood? So these are the things, and then what happens? The maximum, this also what happens? Maximum 1 year it retains. After 1 year, for time what happens? Everything changes, right? So even your stromal layers are retaining only for what happens? 12 months, right? 12 months of time. So this gas is very important. It's very hydrophilic, right? Hydrophilic. Cornea is hydrophobic, but this is hydrophilic in nature, right? Hydrophilic nature responsible for exactly spacing on the fibers. That is cement actually, so that if the your fiber, this corneas, arrangement of these fibers, one fiber to next fiber distance is filled with this, and because of that, what happens? It retains, right? Filled with this because of it retains, and it has a water inhibition, pressure. In a sense, what happens? Your eye has an intraocular pressure. No? You have pressure. You don't have pressure. No pressure. Everybody has pressure. You have pressure? You have pressure or not? Huh? Everybody has little pressure. Up to one threshold. Now, if your intraocular pressure is normal, pressure should be there. It should be normal. Sugar should be there. It should be normal. Now, my sugar is too much. Also, for last nearly 10 days, I'm not taking any sugar. My food pattern I have changed. So hopefully within 1 month, I'm trying to drop to 135, 140. It has been dropping every day, 10 millimeter more. I'm dropping my blood sugar every day. Right? Even that Muslim cardiologist also knows. I have already told him I have blood sugar, no sugar. Right? I have told that cardiologist also. no sugar, no banana, no yellow roti, don't bring anything. I'm having, but uh, my wife also I told. What I told? Premaratna died because of what? His wife didn't treat properly. Otherwise, Premaratna could have lived at least more next 5 years. So now wife is also what? Making candle and doing everything. And even for IKEA people also I say. And even I didn't get cake also, no? Right? So now for last nearly 10 days, no sugar intake, no paratha intake, no bitter roti intake. Whether I don't have that, this particular thing to eat, I don't have that. So I can eat anything. Right? So because that's no problem for me. Right? Understood. So recently, and then after that, I spent a lot of time to study about diabetic after that. Then I learned what? Right? Calories. I learned what? Glucose index. I learned what? Glucose load. So what is glucose load? What is glucose index? And what is calories? The calorie is not a problem for diabetic because if you take 1 liter of water also, water is not going to turn into glucose. That is going to turn into fatty acid. When you eat meat, fish, no any glucose load. Only calorie goes up. Glucose doesn't go up. But banana takes. So last few days, I'm learning what? So I'm trying to reduce my blood sugar naturally. Right? And successfully, it's coming down very fast. So hopefully, within 30 days, I will come back to normal. Understood? So because I have seen my uncle, with whom I have grown, for last 50 years, he is diabetic, blood pressure, cholesterol, he is taking all medicine. Very disciplined. For last 50 years, he has no diabetes, no cataract, no any no problem, nothing. So if you maintain your discipline, it can be possible. And he is a very good example. So I hope within 1 month I can. I have same gene now. Understood. So because of that is possible. Right? Understood. So because of that, once you start, now here what happens? You have internal pressure. Pressure is there or not? Internal pressure is there. If your internal pressure is there, automatically your pressure will press cornea, press sclera, press optic nerve, press everything. Not only optic nerve will be pressed, automatically your cornea will be pressed. When cornea get pressure, what happens? Then your stroma gets certain kind of a pressure emission. Right? And then what happens? If it is cornea to get swell, because of pressure, you should have at least about 50 millimeter mercury pressure. Understood? Right? Then what happens? Your inpatient pressure and your intraocular pressure balance only does not cause corneas in swelling. Understood? So this is what intraocular pressure is completely dependent on how much emission pressure is there. That is what we are doing with the supply node. What do? You press the cornea and see how much pressure is there. Right? So for that, what happens? IOP compress the cornea and stroma. Therefore, the inpatient pressure is in a vivo lower than the swelling pressure. And for example, if the swelling pressure is 50 millimeter, right, the IOP is 15 millimeter, then your inpatient pressure is 35 millimeters. That means 15 minus 50 is equal to 35. Right? But if your intraocular pressure is 25 minus 50, then your inpatient pressure is only 35. If your intraocular pressure is 35, then your inpatient pressure is 15 only. Right? Understood? So your intraocular pressure matters the corneal thickness, matters the cornea's compression, and matters the cornea's amount of what? Water. Right? Understood? How much water is there, and that means what? Your cornea getting dry eye causes intraocular pressure. So your intraocular pressure can go up with what? Dry eye. So Charles Dang, our summer singer doesn't sleep till 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, develop dry eye. And later on, what will happen? Develop side glaucoma. So glaucoma and your dry eye has very much hand-to-hand relations. So if you want to develop glaucoma, you should not. You should be on handphone 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock without sleeping. And you will, what happen? You will develop what? What? What will develop? Glaucoma. Chicken doesn't have glucose load. Zero glucose load. So how much chicken you eat, your blood sugar won't go up. Understood? So I recently learned that. Even 1,000 kilo also if I eat, my blood sugar is not going to go up. Right? Glucose load means glucose index. Right? And glucose index minus index minus the multiplied by glucose index into the amount 1 kilo 100 gram divided by 1,000 is called glucose load. So not glucose index is important. So glucose load is important. But peanut, if you eat 1 cup of peanut, right? Even glucose load is only 2. Peanut doesn't increase the load. One of my favorite food. But my myopathy, no more myopathy. Myopathy. Now these and these things, if you take a sprout one, the glucose index, load is low, right? So these days because of this thing, I have learned that. So keratocytes looks like this. So fibroblasts looks like this, and that what happens? It spreads in between the your collagen lamellase, right? And the collagen lamellase arrangement should be very perfect. Otherwise, that will what happen? Your cornea's transparency will go down, right? And this is thin, flat, 10 microns diameter cell, right? And which is about 5 to 50 microns intercellular space will be there. And then what happens? It is joining with what? Hemichromosomes to manage the cells to join together, right? So stromal lamellae is other part, right? Stromal lamellae, which is very important for what? For transparency, right? Lamellae is the one. And then what happens? That is well organized, right? Beautifully organized. The way it is been organized is you can see in a picture here, right? So this is how nicely it is organized, and it should be, right? If that gets disturbed, then cornea gets what? Lose the transparency, right? Lose the transparency. So laminates should be very, very well organized, and in a corneal metabolism, right? So you are going to learn about, I suppose, right? So aerobic process of metabolism. Right? You guys have done, right? Aerobic means when oxygen exists, and without oxygen, right? How ATPs are formed, right? So that's you have to. So all those things are necessary, right? Refreshing, and this is very, very important. So these slides you can see, and then what happens? This now you have a fourth layer is basement membrane. Basement membrane is actually structureless, and with the age it gets thick, right? And then what happens? It is about 10 to 12 microns, and what happens? It's the basement membrane of the endothelium, right? And sometimes this basement membrane, what happens? It protrudes toward the what? Antechamber, right? And it disturbs the endothelium, right? It comes toward the antechamber. Antechamber, your basement membrane is this. Your antechamber is this now. Antechamber is here. Your lens is here, right? So here, your basement membrane comes toward this side, and you see this as a Hassel-Henle, what we call as a Hassel-Henle word. And you can see on a 3 clamp, you can observe these things, right? And this is what happens in a basement membranes. One of the thickening because of continuous thickening with the age that happens. So this is what your specular microscope look like. Specular microscope gives you an idea of your endothelium looks like this, right? And it is hexagonal in shape. And so if you take young age, you have about 250,000 millimeters square. With the age, it reduces. And if you have to do cataract surgery, and if it is below 7,000, right, right, so then you should not do phaco surgery because phaco damages the endothelium. In our country, we don't see, but in developed countries, every people about 60 years of age, if somebody is going for the cataract surgery, they look at for specular microscope. Well, those countries, what happens if after the surgery, patient doesn't say, they will go to the court. Our fellows, no problem. Right? Understood? Then what happens? It is about 18 to 20 microns in diameter, and this does not have mitosis process. Only what it does is it's like our what you call our Ichuru Mahata line. What happened? So Ichuru Mahata has land here, and this Allapulan fellow has gone to Dubai, right? And what he does, he extends his land like this. Understood? So same like that, other Allap fellow also extends the line like this, right? And when that Dubai fellow comes back, land is not there. Understood? So we call this as a polymechanism. So what happens? Now you have a endothelial layer which has many cells, right? So many cells are there. Now this cell will die. What will happen? The surrounding cell will expand and cover this. And then the cells becomes larger in size. Not that new cell will form, existing cell will expand. So we call that as a polymechanism, right? So we call that polymechanism will take place, right? So 25 to 40 into microscope, you can see this. So which we can see now, right? Then so age-related cellular changes with the age, so definitely the cells are dying. And then what happens? As I told you, so that will cover. So we call as a polymechanism, right? Polymechanism will take place, right? Then after that, what happens? Vascular part of the cornea. Cornea is a vascular nature. So in limbal area, you get some perilimbal plexus are there, which accounts for very little amount of what, so the nutrition supply. But if the anaerobic condition what happens, those blood vessels will enter to the cornea and corneal evascuration take place. That's why clear contactless related what red eye, right, will happen, right? And then what happens? So minor role on nutrition, and it's your cornea is completely vessel free. So you can see these nerve fibers are like some of the even you people also you can see nerve fibers. But when it is swelling, somebody has corneal edema in there. Swelling is the nerve fibers are visible, right? Nerve fibers are visible, right? So these nerve fibers you can get from trigeminal nerve. These nerve fibers are innervated, right? So this is actually we are trying to cover not only anatomical point of view, trying to cover your anatomy also, right? So then what happens? And so your anatomy part, which is missing from your first year part, and some of the first year part is there, which will refresh you, and then then optical, anatomical part, and then not disease part. Disease part, Dr. Dhanuka will cover, right? And I hope he has covered the cornea now, not yet, right? So cornea has huge chapter, right? And go through that. And so in between, I will not cover, but I will ask. I will what? Ask. So what topics he has covered? Conjunctiva, eyelid. Eyelid covered. So you know now anklioblastron, symblepharon, anklioblastron, no? Reverse canthus. No, not no. Why? This. No. Right? So some people they every morning they have red eye. And then when they are what happens, their eyelid is not popping enough. So what is that condition called? Eyelid is a tough man. They have to निकाल हो kilos volt carry. And then I get red. What is that condition called? Whose eyelid condition is called what? Now, if you see some of the old people, some even young people also nowadays, they have some heat coming like this, no? So some people they have Not old people, they have anyway. Young people also, the cold comes. What is that cold? What is urine from blood? What is ankle from? Those things you have to know, huh? And don't depend on this lessons only, huh? You have to go for additional things. What is the eyelid separates? In which is the deformity caused the ptosis? In a gestational period, you by 3 weeks of time, once the woman, the ladies get pregnant, right? So, again, I'm telling you guys, even in IK also, few girls they had a problem, right? And so maybe emotionally you get something into, but don't get pregnant. Understood? Be very careful because your whole life is finished. Understood? Because one emotional this thing that can happen, right? But be careful, right? And take one. Understood? Right? Now you know that some of your friends, Charumat is very good friend. Now she has a child. No, unwanted things. Right? Now, no first year also, no diploma also. Now carrying a child, going Kapragama. It's not like even emotionally you went into something wrong you did, and just click one question one. You go to the pharmacy and ask, I want question one, they will give. It's nothing harm. The one emotional mistake you cannot spoil whole life. No? Understood? So she has spoiled her whole life. Understood? So which you cannot recover. Some people now they get awarded at 2-3 months after. They get dangerous because of 3 months of time. I start to form. So 3 weeks of time, not 3 months, 3 weeks of time. Once somebody gets pregnant, 3 weeks of time, whatever, hearts are done, the routine done, eye also done. Your brain stim also done. Brain stimulating, your optic stock has already come. Your optic nerve has already made. Your lens blackout has already done. In 3 weeks of time, your eyelid is also performed. That's what I'm telling you. Now you have to remember which week what will form. And which week deformity cause ptosis, which week deformity cause epicanthus, which week deformity cause angular, which week going to cause coloboma, late coloboma. Those are very, very important. Right? Understood? So those, remember that part. Study well and ask many questions. So actually, these surgeons when they come, you have to already start. Now this week, what is going to you have these 2 hours you have to take for what? Whatever that you are confused, what you are not clear, you should make not. You should lecture. Actually, you should answer your question. Not listen to him. Ask many questions and ask. Follow answer the day. 8 doses way. Mark has done any. I need to go open the how to differentiate, mechanical doses and the neurological doses. Brain stroke doses are from communication. That is how you have to spend your time. Well, other doses like doses lesson, you can, enough YouTube, this thing. Now even now when I'm going to do for online metabolization and those things, what I'm going to do, you have to already study, then we can go very fast. Understood? It is not higher education is not that you like class, other lesson, not that. Understood? You should carry many question bags and throw the questions. That is what is the best. And their experience, very strict. My student understood. So then what happens? Now I think he's going to come 11 o'clock, right? 11 o'clock. 11 my mark, yeah. Right. So 11 o'clock he'll come. Just go washroom wherever you want to go, and when he comes, be here and do your part. 11 to 12, 1 is there, and 1 to 2 we will have a break, and 2 to 4 we will have a stand up. Right? 7 lessons per week. Good, no? Someone saying good or not? Huh? Good. So someone saying because someone saying about optimism we made candy. Exactly same one lady was right. Okay then. Jai Ram.